Hi everyone, welcome to the online streaming of European Researchers' Night. This program is organized by the Association of Hungarian Women in Science. The next section is called Space Simulation in an Underwater Habitat and presented by Dr. Csilla Ari. As a researcher and a crew member of the NEEMO 23rd mission, Dr. Csilla Ari lived underwater for 9 days to simulate spaceflight, to study human psychology and physiology, and to test equipment that will be used in space. In the next presentation, she will be talking about working together with NASA and ESA astronauts and about the challenges of living in an isolated, high-stress, high-workload, extreme environment. Csilla is here with us, and we are really looking forward to the presentation, so the online stage is yours, Csilla.
Üdvözlök mindenkit Magyarországon! Thank you so much for the kind introduction and for the opportunity to present today. I'm going to talk about one of the most exciting experiences of my life. In 2019, I was living underwater for 9 days as part of a space simulation mission, a NEEMO 23 mission. So what is NEEMO exactly? It stands for NASA Extreme Environment Mission Operation, and I will explain why this is the name. I'm going to talk a little bit about the habitat itself, the participants, the experiments, and the missions that I participated in. So the Aquarius Habitat is one of the only undersea laboratory that is dedicated for science and education, and it's located in the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary, about 5.5 miles offshore and about 19 meters deep. The habitat itself is about 14 meters long, so it's really not that big. So you can imagine 6 people living there for 9-10 days. Not super comfortable, but it's doable. So this is how the habitat looks like from inside. There is a very small area for sleeping with 6 bunk beds. There is a second chamber, or we call it main lock, where we have the kitchen, a dining table. We conduct most of the experiments. And then we have another smaller entry lock where we have the toilet and most of the science equipment. And we have a wet porch where we have the shower and a way to enter and exit the habitat. So the habitat is continuously open to the sea, and you can imagine, for example, if you take a glass, turn it upside down and push it down into water, you will create a bubble inside the glass. So we basically live in this bubble, and we have to maintain higher pressure inside the habitat so the water cannot enter, but we can go in and out from the habitat. And if we can start a video, I can show you how do we do that. So, for example, we have to wear a hardhead diving suit that is pretty heavy. It's approximately, the helmet is 14 kilos, and all the equipment that we have on is an extra about 30 kilos. I don't know if the video could be started. So, kinds of communication checks with the mission control that is on the land and make sure that everything is working right. And we go outside, walk on the bottom of the sea for a couple hours, which we call as a simulated spacewalk or extravehicular activity. But we are continuously tethered to the habitat. So I don't know if we are getting the video or not. So Okay. So next, why do we use the NEEMO habitat as a space analog? For example, we can simulate weightlessness, not inside the habitat, but when we are going on the extravehicular activities and we walk on the seabed, basically, we are almost weightless. We also able to simulate our weight that would be on the lunar surface or on the Mars. So we put extra weight on ourselves. We can also simulate spacewalk, like I mentioned, these extravehicular activities. And it's also similar to the space environment in a way that we are completely isolated, and also we are not able to return to real life immediately because it can be lethal. That's because within about 24 hours, our body is going to be completely saturated with the dissolved gases that we breathe in, which means that if we return to the surface in a very short time, that can cause serious injuries to our bodies, and it can be also lethal. Which means that if anything happens, any emergency, there's no way basically to return to the surface safely immediately. It takes about 15 or 16 hours to return to the surface. So that gives an extra stress to live in there. We are also supported by a mission control that is located on land. We eat space food. And we are living in a confined, crowded, isolated space. So what do we do actually on this NEEMO mission? We evaluate tools, techniques, and procedures that are going to be used in future space missions. We also monitor human performance and physiology under these extreme environments. And we also use the NEEMO missions to train astronauts for future space missions. So we often get the question, how do we get the air and electricity down to the habitat? There is a surface life support buoy that is continuously connected to the habitat. And this is how we are getting the air, electricity, and internet down. In 2017, there was, I'm sure you heard about Hurricane Irma. Unfortunately, that damaged this life support buoy and got drifted away. It was broken. So that's why in 2018, there was no mission because it needed time to replace things and recover some of these pieces. And 2019 was the next mission when we could use the habitat again. So in 2017, my husband and I became involved with the first NEEMO mission, the NEEMO 22. And my husband was a crew member, and I was helping coordinate the research projects in the mission control, and also participated as a support diver. We both had to go through a very thorough training. This is at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, the neutral buoyancy laboratory, where we had to do different swimming tests. As you can see, there's a mock-up of the ISS underwater in this tank. And this is where they practice the spacewalks, because the best way to stimulate weightlessness is being underwater. So after we passed all the tests that we needed to pass, my husband and his team went down to the Aquarius Habitat, and we were monitoring their mission from land, from the Mission Control Center, and we also helped them with instructions. Different research institutes and universities were participating, and they were giving instructions to the crew members if there was anything they had to do differently, and also professional people from the European Space Agency and from NASA participated and helped this mission control procedures. Also, there were support divers to make sure that the aquanauts are safe, because, like I mentioned, there is a port that the aquanauts are tethered to the habitat, which supplies their air and the communication system too. So we have to make sure that it doesn't get entangled in anything, so the aquanauts can stay safe. So after this mission, after NEEMO 22, a couple months later, I got a phone call that NASA selected me to be part of NASA NEEMO 23 mission as a crew member. So obviously I was very surprised and I didn't expect that, and I was very happy, accepted it. And especially because my team was super nice and accomplished women. My commander was selected to be Samantha Cristoforetti. She works at the European Space Agency, and she holds the record for the longest uninterrupted spaceflight of a European astronaut until 2017. Jessica Watkins is a geologist, a NASA astronaut, and Dr. Shirley Pomponi, she works at the NOAA Ocean Exploration Institute. So this was the theme for NEEMO 23. We had two great guys, habitat technicians, joining us, Mark and Tom, who helped us. Basically, they operated the habitat, so we didn't have to deal with the technical issues. They basically kept us alive, so we can concentrate on the experiment. And as you can see, this mission was kind of special in a way that 4 of the crew members, for the first time in NEEMO history, we were all females. But I rather consider this mission as a mixed mission because we obviously had 2 male participants as well. So 1 month before the mission, we started our training at the Johnson Space Center in Houston. There were multiple research institutes and universities who had different objectives as during this mission. So we got the training how to use different procedures, different equipment, and I also trained the crew how to do some of the experiments that our team at the University of South Florida developed, conduct on the psychological, sensory, and physiological changes while we are living in the habitat. So this is just an interesting picture. Samantha is practicing at the Neutral Buoyancy Laboratory, and as you can see, this is the closest we can get to experience weightlessness, like similarly what they experience in space. So we got fitted for specifically for the suits and helmets. And 1 week before the mission started, we went to the Aquarius reef base where we got another 1 week training how to use the equipment, and also we collected baseline measurements. We got training on different safety procedures during diving, and we got training on the hard hat diving, which was new to us. They use this for saturation diving usually, and this is the first time when I used this equipment. And of course, like I mentioned before, during the mission, there was no way to come up to the surface. We just had to go in and out from the habitat, stay on the bottom of the sea, but we could never surface. So in 2019, June 13, we had the splashdown when we entered the habitat. And like I mentioned before, every day we had extravehicular activities. We can start the next video if possible. So during these extravehicular activities, we had to spend about 3 to 5 hours outside conducting different experiments. And as you can see, these videos show that it's basically we are weightless, but we also had to consider sometimes strong current conditions. So we had to work against the current. And we also, of course, are surrounded by animals. So we had to pay attention not to step on a stingray or not to touch things on the coral reef that can sting us or bite us. Also during these EVAs, we had the ability to communicate with each other through the helmet. We could communicate with the habitat and get feedback from them, and only in emergency situations we could communicate with the land to the mission control. We used a specific dog cart to transfer our equipment between the sites. So if you can see the video, you will be able to see that little cart too. So every day we got the plan, which area we had to explore and perform different experiments. So we had a system to monitor our tasks and performance. Weeks or months before the mission, it was established whose task is going to be what, how long does it take, and when should it happen. And we had to be very strict to follow the schedule, because otherwise we can mess up each other's schedule and the whole mission plan. And they could follow this from the mission control too. We tested scanning electron microscope, which was very interesting. The first time it was used in underwater habitat. Usually a scanning electron microscope takes up about a room size, so very special equipment which was about the size of a coffee maker. And we had the chance to test it for the first time. Then I think they sent it up to the International Space Station. We tested an augmented reality glass that helped us to give instructions to conduct complicated tasks without any previous knowledge. We collected different geological samples with some equipment that was developed with by the European Space Agency. And you can start the next video. This is about the lunar evacuation system, the LETA system, that we had to test to give feedback on a system that will be used to save an incapacitated astronaut if there is any injury on the surface of the moon or anywhere else. How can an astronaut transport an incapacitated other astronaut back to the habitat? We collected blood samples and saliva samples to get better understanding of our metabolic physiology, hormonal changes, inflammatory parameters, oxygen stress. And yes, we also collected poop for analyzing gut microbiome before and after the mission. We also used a real-time performance monitoring system, which was basically a landing simulation that we had to land the spacecraft while being under stress and have different distractions. We had a system that we had to wear to monitor the in the habitat. And we also had a system to test how to measure the metabolism and the bioenergetics of sponges. This was a system that was originally developed for corals, but this was the first time that we used it for sponges. So we can start the next video. This just shows some of the equipment. We also, of course, with prior permission from the national park, we were allowed to collect some samples from some of the sponges. Again, testing a special kind of equipment. And this system was also developed with by some of the marine biologist colleagues at the NOAA Research Institute. We also worked together with the Coral Restoration Foundation to help restore some of the coral reefs. And we also performed several psychological tests about individual cognition and about team cognition. And you can start the next video. I think it's video 6. So that video will show me sitting in front of the habitat, basically performing one of these psychological tests that we perform not only in the habitat, but also during the days. As you can imagine, being outside, working underwater for 3 to 5 hours during these days can have an effect on psychological load. We tested, for example, sensory motor speed, visual learning, working memory, risk decision making. And we also wanted to understand how personality affects performance, how the high workload, stressful environment affects our performance, and different types of creative profiles can also perform differently. We also conducted some sensory studies that were really interesting. We tested visual acuity, how our vision is changing due to living under pressure for such time. And we also tested taste perception, because astronauts and also aquanauts reported previously that taste perception can change. So we conducted special experiments about that. We tested some equipment specifically for the Navy. It was a special helmet where they incorporated a special vision display, so the diver can actually see instructions, data inside the helmet while diving. And we also tested a special exercise equipment that can be used even when there's no gravity. It was basically doing a squat with a specialized display system. We also had a neurocognition test where they wanted to understand how the physical demands and psychological cognitive demands compete when we perform a specific task. When our days ended about 7 p.m., 7 o'clock in the evening, I decided that I wanted to do some other experiments for the National Geographic Open Explorer project that I was part of. And I used a remotely operated vehicle, an ROV, send out and explore the waters around the habitat at night, because I was looking for bioluminescence. And if we can start the next video, you can some of the images I collected. I also use to collect content to analyze how different environmental parameters can affect the plankton around the habitat. We also tested an equipment and a system to repair potentially damaged habitat. So the idea was that three-dimensional, 3D printed modules are going to be replaced. So we simulated a 3D habitat repair. And we also measured motor function changes, such as strength and how our manual dexterity changed over time. Not only inside the habitat, but also during the EVAs. Again, you can imagine after working outside for 5 hours, our manual dexterity can change, and we understand how big of an impact we are going to experience. We had a sleep study to understand how our sleep pattern is affected in response to all the stress and workload. And of course, we monitored our body composition changes. For example, how our adipose tissue thickness change or muscle change. And we also had night EVAs. So sometimes after being out for 5 hours, at nighttime, we went back for another 2 hours to explore, because in the lunar surface, it's probably, these are the light conditions that the astronauts are going to experience. So those were really exciting EVAs too. And probably the most dangerous part was the decompression, when we had to get rid of all the dissolved gases that accumulated in our body. So like I mentioned, we can't return to the surface very quickly. So it took about 16 hours to get rid of those dissolved gases. They basically locked the habitat chambers, and we slowly started to reduce the pressure until the pressure was again about the same as on the surface. We needed to follow a very strict military decompression protocol. We had to breathe pure oxygen for an hour to help this process. But when you do that, you have an increased risk of getting seizures. So we were monitored by diving medical experts, and luckily nobody had any issues. And after 16 hours, we returned to the pressure of the surface, and then from there we quickly simulated a regular dive. So in a few minutes, we increased the pressure again, the pressure where we were. We opened the locks, the entry locks, and using dive equipment, could swim up to the surface. So June 21st, 2019, we returned to the surface. And this is our team. And I wanted to highlight that this team was not about 6 of us, but really much more people contributed to the success of this mission. People and teams participated from NASA, from the European Space Agency, experts from the Aquarius Reef base who operated the boats, the habitat, and watched out for our safety. And of course, the University of South Florida research team and several other universities and institutes who contributed to the success of this mission. So with that, I would like to thank you for your attention, and I can take questions. We can watch some of the videos.
Thank you for your presentation, and we had some questions, so I'd like to ask you to answer these questions. The first was from Emily Hofer, and her question was, if someone has a medical emergency and has to be taken to hospital while in the habitat, what would you do?
Well, that was we had different safety procedures for different scenarios. So we had like days of training about all kinds of emergency situations. Like I mentioned before, because of this pressure situation, returning to the surface is not immediately, it's not a possibility. However, if there is a case of a fire, for example, in the habitat, or somebody has a serious medical emergency that you mentioned, there was a way to make a risky but a possible exit from the habitat. So the Aquarius Reef base had several hyperbaric chambers that they had on a boat, which they could bring out to the habitat within maybe a half an hour. And we could come up to the surface and they could put us in this hyperbaric chamber and pressurize us again and transport us back to the land where there are other hyperbaric chambers, and we could go through that decompression protocol safely on land. But obviously it's not a desirable solution, but if something that serious would happen, this would be the procedure.
Thank you for your answer, and now I'm searching for the other questions. Wait a minute, please. Unfortunately, I cannot see that comment, but if I remember right, it was about the length of the missions, that all of the missions last for 9 days, or there are any longer missions?
Yeah, so there are differences between the missions. So NASA has been using the Aquarius Reef base 2001. That's when there was the first NEEMO mission to specifically train astronauts for space missions. And that in 2001, there was the first NEEMO mission, and in 2019 was the NEEMO 23. In between, there were several other missions, and all of them are a little bit different. They range between 5 to 10 days, or maybe 14 days. It depends what are the goals, what are the experimental procedures that they are trying to accomplish during that specific mission. For example, my mission was originally planned to be 10 days long, but because of weather circumstances, we had to delay my mission. And by delaying it, pushing it a day or two out, it caused a lot of logistical issues that impacted like about 50 or 100 people. So it was eventually impossible to push it any further. We had to cut 1 day. So that's why my mission was originally supposed to be 10 days, but ended up to be 9 days. But it is changing every mission.
What was your most memorable moment in that 9 days?
There were a lot. It's hard to specify one. I really enjoyed working with such professional people. Everybody was like really dedicated and very professional attitude throughout the whole mission. I really enjoyed that. There was probably one most exciting moment when we had an equipment that we had to work with, what I mentioned before, to collect metabolism information of the sponges, but it needed internet connection. It didn't work for a couple of days. They had to fix something on the surface, so we were not able to use the equipment like it was planned for days. And I knew that the team developed this equipment, put months or maybe years of effort to be able to conduct this experiment. So it was a lot of pressure on us to make it work, but there were things out of our control that we couldn't solve while we were down there. So the surface team was working on troubleshooting. And the last day when we had that task scheduled, I was on the schedule to go out and do the EVA and try to work with that equipment. And finally, we could get it to work. So I had only a couple hours to basically collect all the data that the team needed, and that was supposed to be collected for like 3 days. So it was a lot of pressure on me, and I was trying to work like really fast to collect everything what they needed, because I knew how much work they put in that and how much they were expecting it. And when I finished the EVA, I got a note from mission control that said the whole team is jumping around and celebrating at mission control. So I think that was the most emotional moment for me.
And because of the time limit, the last but not least, a question from SAS O. What kind of physical training did you have to do prior to the mission? What are some of the medical conditions with which one is not allowed to participate in a mission like this?
There was no specific task that we needed to do to train. We knew that there were specific tests that we needed to pass. So in order to pass those tests, it doesn't matter how you train, you know that have to be able to pass those tests. For example, we had to swim, I think about 600 meters within a certain amount of time, within like 12 minutes or something. We had to swim underwater for 50 meters, and we had to tread water for like 15 minutes continuously. So in order to do that, you will train in different ways, knowing your body, however you can prepare. I was running a lot, do aerobic exercises, we swam a lot, and however you can prepare your body, but you just have to make sure that you can pass those tests they required. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your presentation.